Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. Excited for today's episode. We are talking to the CEO of the Wealth Elevator, and what he does is he teaches people about investing in real estate, private equity. He's got a podcast that's been running for 9 years. He writes books, lots of cool stuff. So I'm excited to be rocking out today with Lane Kawaoka. Hey Lane, you ready to rock?
Ready to rock, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Perfect. So we always start off here on a good note. Tell me a story of success that we can be inspired by.
So I was a engineer back in 2007 when I graduated. Bought a rental property a couple of years later, and today have bought over $2 billion of deals in the past. And yeah, that engineering job went by the wayside, I think 2018, and that's when I am now able to work from home.
Wow, right on. Engineering to buying properties, eh? How did that come about? Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so I mean the my parents never owned rental properties. In fact, in the beginning, they were always ones that always say you don't want people to live in your house because they'll trash it.
Mm,
But in 2007, I graduated and I had a good paying job. So and I was a good saver. So I was able to save 20, 30 grand per year. And I saved that up after a couple years to put in a down payment up in Seattle, Washington, where I lived up there. And at that point, I was always kind of brainwashed to do the 401k, the retirement plans, and buy a house to live in. Because again, that's what we're all taught to do.
yeah.
And this is in my early 20s, and I was traveling all over for work at the time. Really never home. I was a construction supervisor. Was my first role as an engineer. And because I was only home on Saturdays, it was kind of silly for me to have this big house to myself. So kind of on a whim, I just called up an old property manager, landlord, and kind of got them to manage my property, and I became a landlord. And I, lived off the company dime, lived in the hotels they put me in, and I got this taste of cash flow, and that was kind of the split from normal divergence of finances and investments, and I started to realize, like in the beginning, it was just beer money, right? The mortgage was 1,600 and the rents were 2,200. I was very unsophisticated. I didn't knew nothing about like the rent to value ratios you're looking for,
Mhm.
and the 50% rule where half of your rents typically go to expenses like things break, paying for the property manager. I just thought, wow, this is kind of cool, right? I'm getting this beer money on the side, and that was kind of when I was like, wait a minute, if I kept doing this a few more times, several years, it's not a get rich quick scheme. I'll be able to escape the rat race and, just fool around at home all day long.
That's awesome. Well done. Well, okay. So I don't know. Things don't always go as planned. Usually there's some things, some hiccups along the way. And I'm wondering, can you share with me something that didn't go as planned on the way on that journey?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, you're clashing with a lot of financial ideas, tips out there from all kinds of sources. One of the things that I've always told people is you never take financial advice from people who are not financially free.
Yeah.
You never take financial advice from the people at the day job in the cubicle world, or people still at the grind 20, 30 years later because they're probably
Mhm.
doing it wrong, right? You
Mhm.
want to take financial advice from wealthy people, or ideally, first generation multimillionaires who created their own wealth on their
Yeah.
own.
Yeah.
And one of those things very early on was, I thought that it would make sense to go to a 15-year mortgage instead of a 30-year, right? Because everybody talks of how much more interest you pay. In reality, investors are looking at from a different point of view of, elongating your mortgage payments so you can go and pick up more and more assets or properties, right? That's the big part of it. Everybody's
Mhm.
talking about this 50-year mortgage thing, or heck, throw it 100 years, right? But yeah, you're paying a boatload more insurance, but that's kind of myopically looking at the debt portion. If you could take that mortgage and go buy, because you're shielding your monthly income a little bit, you could take that income and have it pull up and buy another property, and then another property, and another property. That's what you have to compare the two scenarios.
Mm.
Actually, kind of working on a video on this very topic, but yeah, very early on, I switched to 15-year mortgage, and I started to interact with more sophisticated investors and started to realize that was the opposite way I wanted to do, and I had to switch back. So I pay a lot of money, all these hidden fees to these brokers to do that. And so, a lot of these, like, I had to kind of unlearn a lot of the things that my parents and society taught me getting into this world. And, for 2000 and, that was 2012, I bought a duplex, the next property in Seattle. And then I started to buy property sort of sight unseen in Birmingham, Atlanta, Indianapolis, thousands of miles away. And, more for cash flow. Typically you look for properties where the monthly rents divided by the purchase price is better than 1%. So, at that time, buying properties that were $60,000, $70,000 that could rent for $800 a month
Hmm.
out there. And this, did that till 2015, where I had 11 of these things coming in, but still working the engineering job.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, isn't that interesting that we have to unlearn so many things, that we've been taught in order to have that success? I mean, hey, it makes sense. I mean, that's why they say it's the 1%. I mean, they must be doing something different, right?
Yeah, and in 2016, that's also when I started my podcast, right? Which opened
Mm.
a lot of doors for me networking wise. And some of those doors I walked through were just interacting with other accredited investors. Accredited investors is not like you need test or anything like that. It's just you have a net worth of $1 million or you make over $200,000 a year. So sort of wealthy people, right?
Yeah.
And I started to interact with them and started to realize a lot of the best practices and strategies that they did were, the three big things. They invest in alternative investments off of the main street, the Wall Street investments. Number two, they with these real estate projects, etc., or oil and gas, they enact a lot of these different alternative tax strategies that go well
Uh,
beyond your retirement account. That's kind of small potatoes. And then they use life insurance in a unique way. But these three strategies put together, I kind of call the trifecta that we talk about in the wealth elevator, um, is not something that any guy can't just do. But it's kind of opposite of how people would put it together, in fact. But like you said, this is how the wealthy do things. And this is what was confirmed to me multiple times in micro connections and interactions. And started to read the writing on the wall. It's like, wow, these very wealthy, intelligent people doing things very differently. But this is not something that the average Joe can't do. And that was kind of started to be my passion. I mean, it started to actually upset me a little bit.
mm,
So many people work so hard out there, banging their head against the wall so much and trying to save, and they're just doing it the wrong way
yeah.
in a way.
Yeah, I've had some similar frustrations. And then, I mean, when you start to learn these things, I don't know if you experience the same thing, but you just start to tell people about it and they just think you're crazy. It's like they don't take your advice at all. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm just literally looking at this guy that makes way more than both of us combined, and that's what he's doing. I don't know what else to tell you. Oh, it's probably some sort of scam that they're doing or whatever, trying to trick us, right? But I mean, it just over and over, you keep on getting confirmation that they do it differently, right? And we're taught
Yeah.
something totally different. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, they're not trying to sell me anything. I just met him and I met 50 other guys that
yeah,
are just like him. And they're all doing the same different strategies. And what's cool is like everybody comes to it from different directions, but a lot of them came through it like how I did. They did rental properties for a decade. Been
yeah.
there, done that. And they after a while, when you become an accredited investor, you kind of step up to that next level. And this is kind of what I talk about in my book, where I have different levels of the wealth elevator, all these floors, right? The set of strategies when you're under $1 million net worth are different when you get above that. And then when you get $3 to $4 million, the strategies
Yep.
change a bit. But going back to all those little conversations with all these people, started to really see a stark difference. And like you said, people have your average person out there clashes with these types of ideas. Maybe it's ego. I mean, for me, I just don't care. I don't. If people don't want to listen, I don't care. I'm not one of these evangelist kind of guys who's going to just bug everybody. I'm an introvert, so I'm gonna keep it to myself.
Hmm.
right? You know, I was recently featured in Business Insider. If you Google my name, it's kind of a strange um, headline they wrote on me, where like I only kind of hang out with like accredited investors these days. You know, I'm changing the title because it kind of my wife kind of laughed at me. She thought it was kind of weird, but you know, she's like, yeah, you know, you don't really talk to too many people other than your entrepreneur friends or your accredited investor. You know, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. I don't want to, you know, um,
Yeah.
because it's just I feel part of it is like I feel bad that you know I don't want to tell people I don't like it when people tell me what to do, right? Like society telling me that you should do the 401k, you should go to a job, work from work, go into the office.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know you're not supposed to do this, but you know, you treat others like how you want to be treated, right? In fact, it should be you treat others how they want to be treated is the more evolved way these days. But I've always thought like, well, I don't want to be treated. I don't want people telling me ramming financial, religion things down my throat. So I don't want to do it to other people. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where, you know, in 2016, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put it on this podcast, The Wealth Elevator, and if anybody's out there wanting to listen, they'll download it. But if not, cool. You know, I don't have to bother you.
Yeah, that's the best way to handle it too. And I mean, I think that I mean it's like all of us are kind of the same. We're not ready for something until we're ready for it. And you know, when people are looking for a change, they start to seek it out. And I mean, if they're still gonna, I mean, if they're gonna get on a call with you and you're gonna tell them, you know, what they're doing, and then they're still gonna give you a hard time. Well, I mean, like that's on them, right? But I mean, I think that right now the good news is that the information is just everywhere. And not only that, but there's even differences from one wealthy person to another. Like there are lots of different ways that you can go about accumulating wealth. And really, I mean, there are some major principles, but for the most part, you can find somebody that aligns with your personality. Like you say, you're an introvert. Well, I mean, hey, in your area, I mean, you don't have to sell anybody on anything. You're buying real estate. I mean, you just got to go find the right properties and buy them. You might be in a different area where you're in sales. Well, then you do have to convince people. You do have to sell something. So there's just lots of different ways that you can go about building your business. And for people that are looking to grow it through real estate and investing, well, then you're a perfect person to talk to because you're doing it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways you can go, and that's what I enjoy. It's kind of like a puzzle for me.
Mm,
You know, I like solving problems, especially these types of problems. I never like solving the, you know, what's the culvert size and those what how big you build a wall, that kind of problems. But
mm,
you know, yes, the other day I was talking to a guy. His net worth was $12 million.
wow.
He was an older gentleman, and you know, he was running against RMDs, and you know, he was kind of a good boy his whole life, and he contributed most of that net worth to these retirement accounts, which you know, this, I mean, we talk about this a lot, is you know, the retirement accounts are not for everybody, especially for people who are judicious savers like that, because you get to a point now and he's stuck. If he takes money out of there, he's in the highest income bracket.
Yeah.
He's paying more taxes now than he was earlier on in his career. So, you know, he obviously read my book and he's like, dang it, yeah, I kind of see both sides of it now. It's kind of too late. All right, so what do we do now? And I'm like, well, you know, you got a high net worth. There's so many ways you can go about and do this. You know, I try not to give financial advice. That's just not what I do, right? But, you know, I'm like, you know, there's are a few options here. Ultimately, I try to teach people why they would do one thing than the others so they can piece together the whole suite of strategies.
Nice.
Ultimately, you know, he and what we offer is the community, right, to bounce these ideas off of. So if I tell him to do something and it doesn't work, he don't blame me, right? I say that half jokingly, of course, but
Yeah.
you know, I think it's richer when you're building a community, and that's what family office do, right? Their network is their net worth, and you know, but you know, that's kind of like a average day in the life, right? Try and help people on, you know, get onto this, you know, this different mindset in a way, different set of strategies, and but it's cool. Like I get to interact with a lot of people who are, built their wealth on their own, right? First generation multimillionaires.
Nice. So, like, tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did you go about like meeting them, networking with them? Like, were they accepting of you? I think like a lot of people have an idea in their head of what these wealthy people are like. And, was it what you thought it would be?
Well, yeah, I mean, well, today they find me, right? Because the podcasts, and then, most people find me through my book, The Wealth
Okay.
Elevator, nowadays. But in the beginning, and I guess this is maybe useful advice, like I had to go seek them out myself. I had to get myself out of my house and fly somewhere to a conference and, pay to play, right? I had to join a lot of groups that, the entrance fee for a lot of them are over 5 figures. And for a lot
Wow.
of people, they just won't do that
Yeah.
if they even have the time, like a vacation day here away from work. At that time in 2016, when I was kind of, running around, meeting a lot of people during that Genesis time, I was single, I didn't have kids, and all the vacation time, I think I had like 12 days a year, I could dedicate to this side project. I wasn't obligated to take my family to Disneyland for burning up 7 days right there. So I was at a sort of advantage in that way, and I didn't have a spouse that I say, hey, can I join this mastermind over here that costs 25 grand? I'm like, no, I'll do it. I asked myself, and I'll go and do it, right? And that was critical. Eventually I stopped doing that stuff because what you find is a lot of out there, especially in the real estate world or the financial world, or you probably see this entrepreneurial world, right? Like a lot of these online masterminds, they're great to get started, but you typically move off to other
Yeah.
organizations. Today I'm in like EO Entrepreneurs Organization, Vistage, or there's like YPO, Tiger 21, these other firms where they actually verify your revenue to get in and your net worth to get in. But when I was starting in 2016, the business, it was critical that I get around other peers that were kind of trying to start things too.
Mm,
And but you had to pay to play for
yeah.
sure.
Well, and I think that is really valuable because like you say, eventually you sort of move on to different groups and all that stuff. But I think when you're starting, doing something is better than nothing. So whatever you can get into, whatever kind of mastermind you can get into is better than just not doing anything at all. And then what you'll learn, as you probably did, is that, okay, there are some disadvantages to this. There's some other ones that kind of pop up that you're like, oh, this one would be a better fit for me. And then you just move to them. And, I don't think you hold a grudge against the one that you started with, right? It was the path that you took to get there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, on an entrepreneur journey, it typically starts with a really ugly landing page that is like endless scroll sends to sell you some garbage.
Yeah.
You get into that group, you quickly leave to go to the other, but you wouldn't have found the other
No.
group or people if you wouldn't have gone to that first garbage influencer's website first, right?
Yep. Yep. That's exactly it. And that is really what holds a lot of people back. I mean, they look at that and they're like, but they never get to the next step because they didn't take the first step, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And then the next step is, you got to put down 5 figures
Yeah.
plus to get past that stage to then to meet the people. And I think the to put my finger on it, it's the people that you meet who also some of, a lot of them are duped like you to pay that entrance
Yep.
fee,
Yep.
but you kind of flock like a group of birds to the next more fertile lands in a way as a key. But all this happens, I mean, the theme here is like we all work from home, we're independent workers, but nothing special happens unless you interact with multiple people, right? And you build these partnerships and these synergies.
Yeah. Because I think today with the world the way it is with our Zoom and our internet and all that stuff, like it's your playing field is so much larger, right? I mean, maybe a long time ago, like you say, you had to get on a plane, go somewhere, or you're dealing with your local network, and that's it. But now, I mean, the playing field's wide open. You can actually network with people. You can have a mastermind, for example, over Zoom with people from all over the world. These things are open. However, the downside to that is that it's so many choices. There's so much out there, and how do you find something that's real, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you cannot replace in person. I mean, like my CEO groups, we meet 1 day a month for eight
Mhm.
hours, the entire day in person. None of
Wow.
this Zoom stuff.
Wow.
There are so many better. I mean, I think maybe it's obvious, but like when you're in face to face, you really build that connection where
You do.
you don't really get that with Zoom, which is why like for my community that I lead, like we have a retreat every year in Hawaii that's a few days long. And I still think that's important for me to do, right? As much as we leverage the Zoom for the rest of the year and all the Discord channels, etc.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's that you don't build that special connection unless you do it in person, face to face. I don't think that'll ever change. I mean, Robert Cialdini, the guy who wrote the Influence book, I mean, he says that it's just scientifically proven that that's the case. But I would think where like the online stuff comes into play is like you're able to prospect in a way better, and
Yep.
you interact with so many people, and then from there you can decide, all right, who do I want to fly to meet?
Yeah.
As opposed to like my early days when Zoom wasn't as popular in 2016. And I would go to a lot of just garbage conferences and meet a lot of not the best people. And I got a lot of business cards, but it was just a lot of dead ends. Um, but maybe that's how you do it. Maybe that's a better way of shooting fish in a barrel first, right? See, if they're getting their butt to something and flying on a plane, getting a hotel room, they are a lot more bought in than some guys in some basketball shorts in their Zoom room and they're working for their home.
Yep. I agree. And you're going to take things more seriously when you get some skin in the game. That's also scientific, right? It just is what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean you're just dealing with people self-selecting. You're dealing with people who, put some skin in the game, which if that's just get on a plane or even at the very least, if you're already in Dallas and you're going to something in Dallas, rolled out of bed, got in your car, at least you had some price of admission from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, right on. Let's talk a little bit about the cash flow aspect because I mean, especially with you, I mean, real estate, I mean, it's a big deal. You have to put some money down. I'm wondering like, that must have been stressful, first of all, like putting all this money up and not really knowing what's going to happen with it. But how did you make sure that you were going to make more than you were spending?
Yeah, I mean that's why I kept my day job for quite a while.
Yeah.
I bought 11 rental properties in 2015, and you lose money on maybe a third of them every year, right? Like some issue happens, a tenant trashes a property, but when you aggregate, group them all, they for that many rentals, like maybe made like a few grand per month on that, couple
Really?
hundred profit per property. And that's it is somewhat steady state. Like I said, like some of them you're gonna lose money on throughout the year, but the average is what you're going for. And when you get more and more properties, you're able to hit steady state, and it's a lot more reliable income. And at that point, if you just repeat the process, finding a cash flowing property on the get-go, you don't. I'm not a big proponent of like wholesaling, flipping, that type of stuff. Right, that's too much work and risk to me. We teach a different brand of real estate, more passive investing here. But
Okay.
you at that point, it was a good scale, and that was just something for me to build upon. Like the hardest one was in the beginning when I didn't know what I was doing, and that's kind of what we teach. We give away a lot of free analyzers, especially for like the non-accredited investors getting started. We kind of give away a lot of that curriculum for free on our platform, but that's the hardest part, right? When you're kind of getting going. And then what I realize, accredited investors, after they own rental properties a bunch, they eventually grow out of it. And when you become more of an accredited investor, the legal liability of it all is just too much. Even if you buy it within LLCs, LLCs are great for lower net worth investors. Um, you know, if you wanted more protection, you become a passive investor, an LP in a larger syndication, and then now you get exposure to a lot more different assets, more diversification geographically. And then you're also able to expand outside of real estate, buying businesses, but still having an LP position, but still having that upside and then tax benefits too, right?
Wow.
But this is, that was kind of where it's just expanding the portfolio, right? At that point, it's sort of easy 5, 10 years in. It's the first 5 years is the hardest part, and that's how we try to help people get off the ground in that critical juncture.
Okay, right on. Well, okay, let's get into your solo then. So tell me what's exciting in your business.
What's exciting about my business? I mean, I get to kind of, and I kind of it's funny. Like I told people, we were talking like I don't like to people to tell me what to do, right? But I do enjoy to talk about, what I read about in my book, apply it to certain situations and jump on these types of podcasts. And, just maybe not debate, but have good conversations about, what the wealthy do with their money versus what we're all taught to do.
Yeah.
And at least put people to more of a neutral point where they can decide on their own destiny, as opposed to being locked into a 401k strategy where they're going to be doing it for the next 30, 40 years and be lucky if they clear 6 to 8% and ride the roller coaster along the way. So, to me, what's cool is I put that out in the ethos and, people somehow find me and they jump on the email list, they read the book, and we jump on a Zoom, get to know each other. And at that point, I think it's a very self-selecting group of people. And, I enjoy building personal connections with all my investors, and, eventually hang out in Hawaii in person and get that human interaction. And, I think you help people where you were once kind of, struggling. And this was something that I struggled with in 2016 myself. At that time I had 11 rental properties. I thought I knew what I was doing with rentals, and I sort of did, but getting into the world of being an accredited investor, that was the uncertain world that I was getting into, and that's kind of I understand that pain, that uncertainty, and that's what I do today to kind of help people walk from that first floor of the wealth elevator being non-accredited to being an accredited investor, $1 million net worth and greater, and kind of what do you do from there?
Right
And we
on.
also turn into a party with other people.
So tell me, how do we find out more about your business then?
Yeah, they can go to the Wealth Elevator, and the Wealth Elevator podcasts. They listen to podcasts. But I would probably suggest most people just go on Amazon, pick up my book, The Wealth Elevator. Special offer for your folks if they buy it and they email me team@thewealthelevator.com. We'll hook them up with the free PDF and the MP3 version. Because if they're like me, they're not the best reader. We tend to just absorb things through audio form. But yeah, if people are an accredited investor, reach out, Lane@thewealthelevator.com.
So really the best people that would get the most out of this would be people that are accredited investors.
Yeah, yeah. Like, there are a lot of books written out there for, people getting started in credit card debt. Those are the books that have been written thousands of times by Dave Ramsey, Susan Orman,
Yep.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, for example. We mainly work with people who have pretty good jobs or successful businesses already that are, if not already accredited investors or on the road to being it. Some of our folks are, if you've heard the acronym Henry's, high income, not wealthy yet. So the tech bro making $150,000 a year may have a lower net worth, but he's on that trajectory to be accredited not too long in the future. But what I started to realize is, in this world of TikTok and YouTube Shorts, is there's all this random financial advice out there,
Yeah.
and they're all tips. Now, some are good, some are bad, but what was really interesting is like at what point in the journey does it make sense, right? So, 15-year mortgage starting out may not be the best thing when you're trying to grow your net worth.
Uh,
But if you're already $5 million net worth, I tell some people I don't have a problem with that. If you really are averse to debt, go ahead and do it. But, eliminating debt is not totally aligned with financial freedom. And we get into that in the book. But, my book is mainly focused for higher net worth investors, people who are going to get past the $5 million net worth by the end of their lifetime and pass it on to their kids. And it's what I introduce are these floors, these different levels to the wealth building journey. Everything that I've kind of done, right? Like I had rental properties till 2015, sold those. That was kind of encapsulated in the first floor of the
Yep.
wealth elevator. The second floor is, maybe you get to $3-4 million net worth. And that number is different for a lot of people. Some people who I talk to are, a retired couple, the kids are already off to college, already done with college, and they're, on their own. So they may only need, $2.5 million net worth to
Hmm.
be able to comfortably live, throw the money in G bills or something really low risk, low return, and they're fine. Family of four in California, I think kind of where you're at, right? Your kids still need you. You may need 4 or 5 million, $6 million net worth, right? So it's a that number sort of changes, but that's, when you get past that point, that's when you're kind of on that third floor of the wealth elevator. And, I don't want to spoil the book, the rest, that's when you get to those higher levels. And then eventually when you stop trading your time for money and doing a job or business, and you focus on just investing your money.
Wow.
Wouldn't that be great, huh? But that's essentially where I think we're all heading, to be a family office. Unfortunately, most families, 90% lose their wealth in 2 to 3 generations because their kids are boneheads.
Yeah.
But that's why you focus on building a business of investing alongside of your day job in the beginning and then your business. And then you eventually, you pass on the family business of investing to the next generation so they don't just blow the money
Yeah.
or
Wow.
have kids and cut it up, right? That's essentially what cuts mass wealth up, right? You have $10 million and then you have two kids and they have two kids each. Now $10 million is spread 4 to 5 ways.
Yeah. 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 And then if they have even more kids, that by the time you're gone, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so I was wondering, I was asked this question, who is your favorite rock star? What kind of music do you listen to, I guess?
I like EDM music. I like those DJs.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to press me on the traditional like rock star band guitars guys, I mean, like I like the guys who do the entrance themes for like the Major League Baseball closers. I like
Oh,
those songs, right?
yeah, absolutely. The high energy
Um,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. I do CrossFit, so I like, is it Disturbed, right? They're kind
Yeah.
of, I mean, they're not. I guess they're considered like a hardcore band, but they're tame to some others, I think, that are out there. You probably know better than I do.
I do. Yeah, it gets heavier than that, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a functioning adult these days, no longer able to wear black eyeliner and leather, like some teenagers are who have nothing better to do.
Oh, you could do some cosplay, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Right on. Well, thank you so much for rocking out with me today, Lane. This has been a lot of fun.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Tim.
No problem. And to the listeners, make sure you go to workathomerockstar.com for more information. And we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.